The floating city of Zithera, home to the wealthiest and most powerful alien families in the galaxy, glittered like a jewel against the endless violet sky of the gas giant below. Towers of shining crystal floated above the clouds, connected by energy bridges that hummed softly under the feet of the aristocrats walking across them. Among them, Lyria Vaylor, the 20-year-old heiress of the Vaylor family, moved with an elegance that seemed effortless. Every step, every glance was measured. Every eye turned to watch her, for she was not only beautiful but clever, proud, and feared in equal measure. Lyria had always been competitive. Her parents, the rulers of one of the richest sectors of Zithera, had raised her to expect victory at everything: strategy games, intellectual duels, and even social contests. To lose was to invite shame. To fail publicly was almost unthinkable. Yet today, she faced a wager that could decide her reputation forever. The Grand Court of Zithera was full of spectators from across the galaxy. Aliens of every shape and size floated or walked among the crystal bridges. Some had 6 arms, some had glowing eyes. Others seemed almost invisible until they moved. Lyria's opponent, Sarath Nivor, a cunning rival from another elite family, was smirking with an air of confidence. He had challenged her to a duel of intellect and skill, a contest of strategy, agility, and reasoning. The stakes were immense. The loser would owe a lifetime of obedience to the winner. Lyria's eyes narrowed. I have never lost, she thought. I will not start today. The first round was a test of strategy. Both Lyria and Sarath sat at floating tables that displayed glowing holographic maps of a complex battlefield. Each had to move their units in real time, predicting the opponent's actions. Lyria's fingers danced across the controls with speed and precision, anticipating Sarath's every move. But he was clever, too clever, in fact. He had studied her patterns, known her habits, and now made moves that Lyria hadn't anticipated. The crowd gasped as one by one, Lyria's units fell into clever traps. She adjusted, recalculated, but Sarath seemed always one step ahead. Sweat prickled her brow, a feeling she had never truly known. Impossible, she muttered under her breath. I cannot lose. Round 2 was agility and skill. Lyria and Sarath moved to the arena, a chamber filled with floating platforms, holographic obstacles, and energy puzzles. The participants had to navigate through it, completing tasks faster than their opponent. Lyria's movements were flawless, her body as precise as her mind. Yet Sarath had anticipated each challenge and manipulated the environment subtly in his favor. One misstep, an invisible trap that moved just as she jumped, and Lyria fell, barely catching herself at the last moment. The court was silent. Whispers of disbelief rippled across the floating bridges. Lyria's parents watched in horror. Losing in public was bad enough. Losing to Sarath in both skill and intellect was unthinkable. Finally came the last test, reasoning and debate. Each participant had to solve a series of complex puzzles and ethical dilemmas, demonstrating wit, intelligence, and foresight. Lyria's mind raced. She answered each question with confidence, explaining her logic, outlining consequences, predicting results. She was brilliant. Yet Sarath's answers were even more cunning, laced with unexpected insights that challenged the very assumptions she had relied on. The final moment came. A panel of judges, glowing beings of pure energy, announced the results. Lyria's heart sank before the words were even spoken. Winner of the Zithera wager, Sarath Nivor, the lead judge intoned. The court erupted. Some gasped, some cheered, and some whispered quietly, "The heiress has fallen." Lyria's knees weakened and she gripped the edge of her platform to steady herself. She had never felt such a mixture of shame, disbelief, and anger. This cannot be real, she thought. She opened her mouth to protest, but no argument could overturn the decision of the court. She had lost. Then came the ruling, more shocking than the loss itself. The elders of the council stepped forward, their glowing forms radiating authority. By the laws of Zithera, the chief elder announced, Lyria Vaylor, having lost this wager, shall fulfill her obligation as determined by the council. She shall be bound in marriage to a human male, as a demonstration of humility and cultural alliance. A hush fell over the court. Humans were considered clever, yes, but primitive, soft, fragile, and unpredictable. To force an alien heiress to marry a human was almost unthinkable. Lyria's stomach churned. A human? Her mind refused to accept it. This cannot be. she cried, her voice ringing across the bridges. "I am a Veiler. I will not be bound to a silence," the chief elder commanded. "The law is clear. The wager is settled. You will travel to the human colony and fulfill your obligation. Refusal will bring greater shame upon your family and may result in exile." The word exile hung in the air like a sword. Lyria felt the walls of her world crumble. She had always been in control, always victorious, always admired. Now she was powerless, forced into a fate she had never imagined. Later that evening, alone in her chambers, Lyria stared out at the swirling clouds of the gas giant. Her reflection in the crystalline window showed a girl she did not recognize, her golden hair disheveled, her violet eyes wide with fear and frustration. She had conquered many, outwitted the cleverest, and yet here she was, defeated, humiliated, and condemned to live among beings she considered inferior. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Rylan Merrick worked tirelessly in his human colony. The colony was small, dusty, and surrounded by harsh deserts and jagged cliffs. Humans here were hardy and resourceful, surviving with limited technology and endless determination. Rylan was one of the best engineers in the colony, known for his clever solutions and fearless approach to challenges. He had never imagined that his life, so ordinary and hard, would change forever tonight. A message arrived from the Zithran Council, transmitted across the void of space. The human leaders, cautious but respectful, received it with mixed emotions. They had expected interaction with aliens before, but a Zithran heiress forced by law to marry a human was unprecedented. Rylan read the message aloud to the council. "You, Rylan Merrick, are chosen to fulfill the marriage obligation of Lyria Veiler, heiress of the Veiler family of Zithra. You are to receive her in your colony and ensure her well-being, as per interstellar law." The council members exchanged worried glances. Rylan himself felt a shock run through him. Me, a marriage? With an alien heiress? He had never left the colony, never imagined he would meet beings so far beyond human technology or culture. Yet there was no choice. The law of Zithra was absolute. Within days, preparations were made. Lyria's transport arrived, a sleek floating craft with a hull that shimmered like liquid metal. As it descended on the human colony, villagers and council members gathered to witness history. The doors opened and Lyria stepped out. Her appearance was dazzling. Her robes shimmered like starlight, her posture perfect, yet her eyes were filled with defiance and anger. Rylan approached her, unsure how to greet her. He offered a polite nod. "Welcome to our colony," he said, trying to sound confident. I hope you find it acceptable." Lyria's gaze swept over the dusty buildings and rugged terrain, lips curling in disdain. "Acceptable?" she said, voice cold. "I am a Veiler. This is hardly worthy of my presence." Rylan smiled faintly, undeterred. "It may not be what you're used to, but it is our home. And here we value courage, skill, and clever thinking. I hope you will see that humans are not as weak as you might imagine." Lyria laughed softly, a sound full of disbelief. "Humans, weak? I have never seen a challenge so beneath me." But as the sun set over the dusty horizon, casting golden light on the alien and the human standing side by side, neither could deny that their fates were now intertwined. Lyria had lost the wager. Rylan had been chosen as her human partner, and both were about to embark on a journey neither could imagine, one that would challenge their assumptions, test their strengths, and perhaps in time, change their hearts. The floating city of Zithra shimmered in the distance, a world of elegance and power, while the human colony beneath the twin suns waited quietly, unaware that history was about to unfold. The human colony of Arden was small but sturdy, perched on the edge of a jagged canyon and surrounded by golden plains that stretched to the horizon. Dust swirled in the warm wind, and the colony's buildings were simple, functional, and far from the elegance of Lyria's home on Zithra. Yet humans had built it with care, their ingenuity making life possible in this harsh environment. Lyria stepped down from her transport, her shimmering robes brushing the ground. She paused to take in the colony, her violet eyes scanning every detail. Buildings made of stone and metal, simple machines powered by solar energy, rough pathways instead of floating bridges. Everything seemed crude, even primitive. She felt a wave of indignation. How could I, a Veiler heiress, be forced to live here among these Humans, Rylan Merrick approached, calm but cautious. He had been assigned to accompany Lyria during her stay and ensure she adjusted to the colony. He carried himself with quiet confidence, and though he was much shorter and less glamorous than Lyria, his presence radiated competence. "Welcome to Arden," Rylan said, bowing slightly. "I will be your guide and your partner while you are here." Lyria's lips curled in a faint smirk. "Partner?" she asked. Her tone was icy. "I am not accustomed to companions of your kind." Rylan ignored the jab. "Then you will learn," he replied, his voice steady. "Humans are capable in ways you might not expect. I hope you will see that while you are here." For the first few days, life in the colony was a struggle for Lyria. She was accustomed to perfection, floating halls, endless luxuries, servants at every hand. Here there was dust in every corner, machinery that groaned and hissed, and humans who worked tirelessly from sunrise to sunset. The smells, the textures, the noise, it was overwhelming. She tried to maintain her composure, but frustration bubbled beneath the surface. One morning, while observing Rylan fixing a solar generator, she asked, "Why do you use such crude methods? Why not Zitharan technology?" Rylan didn't flinch. "We make do with what we have," he said. "Humans adapt. We survive. That is our strength," Lyria frowned. Adapt, survive? She had lived in a world where failures were unacceptable, and yet these humans persisted despite limitations she would never tolerate. Over time, she began to notice small details that challenged her assumptions. Rylan worked tirelessly, his hands skilled and precise. He could repair equipment, find solutions to problems others thought impossible, and even create simple machines that could perform multiple tasks. He didn't have Zitharan power, but he had ingenuity and courage. One evening, a sudden storm struck the colony. Fierce winds swept across the plains, tearing at roofs and scattering supplies. Humans ran to secure their homes, but the storm was relentless. Lyria panicked, unused to such harsh conditions. She was about to retreat when Rylan appeared, shouting above the wind. "Lyria, come with me! We must secure the generator or the colony will be without power." She followed, struggling against the wind, and found herself side by side with Rylan. Together they held the generator steady, rewired circuits, and managed to prevent disaster. For the first time, Lyria realized that this human, so ordinary in appearance, possessed a bravery and cleverness that she could not ignore. After the storm passed, Lyria sat quietly in the generator room, exhausted and shaken. Rylan handed her a simple cup of water. "You did well," he said. "Better than I expected." Lyria stared at him, unsure how to respond. "Did I do well?" "I only followed orders." "But perhaps." She shook her head. She did not fully understand the feeling rising inside her, a strange mix of respect and curiosity. Life continued, and cultural clashes became a daily occurrence. Lyria struggled with human customs, simple meals, informal greetings, the lack of luxury, but she also began to see their strengths. Humans worked together, solved problems creatively, and faced danger without fear. She saw them risking their lives to protect one another, something she had rarely witnessed among her own kind, where status and pride often outweighed loyalty. Rylan, too, learned from Lyria. Her knowledge of advanced technology, interstellar politics, and strategy was unlike anything he had encountered. He began to appreciate her intelligence, her quick thinking, and even her stubborn determination. Though her attitude was haughty, he could see that behind it was a young woman struggling with a fate she did not choose. One day, the council of the colony called a meeting. A minor crisis had arisen. A supply drone had malfunctioned, threatening food distribution across the settlement. Rylan and Lyria were asked to assist. Lyria observed the humans scrambling, their simple tools and minimal technology, and she was skeptical. "You think you can fix this?" she asked Rylan, raising an eyebrow. Rylan smiled faintly. "We don't just think. We do." Together they approached the drone. Lyria's knowledge of Zitharan machinery allowed her to identify weak points in the design, while Rylan's practical experience allowed him to improvise solutions. Step by step they worked together, overcoming each challenge. By the end of the day, the drone was repaired and the colony's supply system was restored. Humans cheered, not only for the success but for the unexpected collaboration between the alien heiress and the human engineer. Lyria, exhausted, finally allowed herself a small smile. She realized that Rylan's methods, though different from hers, were effective. Humans were clever in ways she had underestimated. As the sun set over the golden plains, Lyria and Rylan walked back to the colony's central hub. Silence stretched between them, comfortable and strange at the same time. "You were resourceful today," Lyria said finally. Her voice lacked the usual edge of arrogance. "And you were adaptable," Rylan replied. "Not many could work with humans and manage so well." Lyria considered his words. She had never admitted weakness or vulnerability, but now she felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Respect, perhaps even the beginnings of trust. The next day, a new challenge arose. Raiders, humans thought they were bandits, but Rylan suspected they were scouts from a hostile alien faction, appeared on the horizon. They were small in number but heavily armed. Panic spread among the colonists. Lyria, seeing the fear and chaos, felt a strange mix of concern and fascination. Rylan immediately took charge, organizing the colonists into defensive teams. He assigned Lyria a role, to use her alien technology knowledge to rig traps along the main canyon paths. At first she hesitated, unused to giving orders in such a chaotic environment, but she quickly adapted, designing clever barriers that slowed the raiders and allowed humans to defend themselves effectively. The battle was tense, but humans held their ground. Lyria saw firsthand how their courage and ingenuity could rival even the most advanced alien tactics. She watched Rylan in action, calm, decisive, fearless, and she realized that humans, though physically weaker and technologically simpler, had a spirit that could not be measured by machines or wealth. After the raiders fled, the colony celebrated their victory. Lyria stood quietly, observing the humans' laughter, their camaraderie, and their joy in small victories. She realized she had underestimated them. Perhaps they were not inferior at all. Perhaps they were something entirely different, and something entirely remarkable. That night, as the twin moons rose over Arden, Lyria sat on the edge of a cliff, looking out at the settlement below. Rylan joined her, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. "You handled yourself well today," he said, offering her a cup. "Perhaps," Lyria replied, taking it reluctantly. "Humans are more interesting than I expected." Rylan smiled, sensing the small change in her tone. "And you are different from what I imagined. Not just an alien heiress, but someone willing to learn and adapt." For the first time, Lyria allowed herself to feel something like friendship, or maybe the first spark of something more. She was still proud, still defiant, but she began to see that this human, so ordinary in appearance, could be a true partner in ways she had never imagined. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the forced union became a partnership of necessity and, gradually, respect. They faced challenges together, learned from one another, and discovered that despite vast differences, humans and aliens could complement each other in surprising ways. The sun rose over the dusty plains of Arden, casting long golden shadows across the colony. Lyria stood on the edge of the central square, arms crossed, watching the humans go about their work. Children ran past carrying baskets of supplies while engineers adjusted solar panels and repaired machinery. She had grown accustomed to the dust, the noise, and the relentless energy of the colony, but she was still far from comfortable. Rylan approached, carrying a small toolkit. His sleeves were rolled up and his hands were smudged with oil and dirt. Lyria raised an eyebrow. "Another day of fixing broken machines?" she asked, her tone a mixture of amusement and disbelief. Rylan smiled faintly. "Every day brings new challenges. Humans find ways to survive even with limited resources. That is something you may find surprising." Lyria folded her arms tighter, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Surprising, yes, but fascinating." Their daily routine had begun to develop a rhythm. In the mornings, they worked on practical projects, repairing water filtration systems, improving energy storage, or adjusting transportation units. Lyria's alien knowledge gave them an edge, allowing her to design solutions far beyond human technology. Rylan's ingenuity, resourcefulness, and experience with the colony's limitations turned those ideas into practical realities. One morning, the colony council summoned them. A derelict satellite from Zithra's orbit had drifted dangerously close to Arden. If it collided with the settlement, it could destroy everything. The satellite had old damaged systems, and no human engineer had ever attempted to repair one. "This is serious," the council leader said, his voice grave. "We need both of you to work together. Lyria, your knowledge of alien systems will be invaluable. Rylan, your understanding of our technology and environment will guide the repair." Lyria's violet eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. For the first time, she was being asked to use her skills for something beyond personal pride. It was a chance to prove herself, not in a court or duel, but in a real life-or-death situation. Rylan handed her a toolkit and pointed toward the landing zone. "We leave in 30 minutes. The satellite is in low orbit. We'll need to board it carefully and make quick repairs." The journey to the satellite was tense. Their shuttle rocked against the thin atmosphere, and the view of Arden below was breathtaking. Lyria had never seen the colony from this height. She felt a strange mixture of awe and concern. "Do humans often risk their lives like this?" she asked, voice low. Rylan glanced at her. "We do what we must to protect each other. Survival is not just about skill or technology, it's about courage." The words struck Lyria. Courage, she thought. I have always relied on power, not heart. The satellite was larger than she expected, its hull scarred and dented. Warning lights blinked intermittently, signaling critical failures. Rylan took the lead, guiding her through narrow corridors and damaged sections. "Here," he said, pointing at a control panel. "The main circuit is fried. We need to reroute power from the secondary lines. I can manage the rerouting, but we'll need your knowledge of alien systems to stabilize the satellite's orbit." Lyria knelt beside the panel, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. She analyzed the alien circuitry, her mind racing. "We can adjust the graviton stabilizers," she said. "If we reroute the main thrusters to compensate for the damaged sections, we can slow the descent." Rylan nodded. "I'll handle the thrusters. You do the stabilizers." Together they worked in tense silence. Sparks flew from the damaged circuits and alarms blared intermittently. Every movement had to be precise. One mistake could send the satellite crashing into Arden. Lyria felt her pulse quicken. She had faced challenges before, but never with stakes so high, and never with someone she was starting to care about at her side. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Lyria and Rylan communicated without words at times, understanding each other's movements, anticipating decisions. The satellite trembled under their efforts, groaning like a living creature, and then, with a final adjustment, the alarm ceased. The satellite stabilized, drifting safely in orbit. They leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Lyria felt a rush of exhilaration, unlike anything she had experienced in the courts of Zithera. "We did it," she said softly, almost in disbelief. Rylan smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "We make a good team." Lyria looked at him, really looked, and saw not just a human engineer, but a clever, brave, and resourceful partner. She felt something she had never expected: respect. Over the next few days, their bond grew. Lyria began to participate in more of the colony's daily life, learning customs, sharing meals, and even attempting manual labor, a task that left her exhausted but strangely proud. Rylan taught her how to repair machines with limited materials, how to predict weather patterns, and how to organize resources for maximum efficiency. In turn, Lyria introduced small innovations from Zithera. She helped design a more efficient water collection system, optimized energy storage, and even modified medical devices to work with human physiology. The colonists watched in awe as the alien Heiress, once haughty and distant, became a problem solver who contributed to their survival. One afternoon, a scout returned from the plains with troubling news. A group of rogue aliens had been spotted near the colony's outskirts. They were scavengers, raiders who preyed on human settlements for supplies. Rylan and Lyria knew they had to act quickly. "We need a plan," Rylan said, studying the map. "The colony is vulnerable. We can't fight them head-on, they outgun us, but we can use the terrain, traps, and the element of surprise." Lyria's eyes lit up. "I can help design decoys and traps using Zitheran tech adapted for human use. We can guide them into a canyon where their numbers won't matter." They spent hours preparing. Humans set up barriers, rigged alarms, and positioned themselves strategically. Lyria used her alien knowledge to design holographic decoys and misleading signals, confusing the raiders. Rylan coordinated the human teams, ensuring that everyone was in place and ready. When the raiders arrived, chaos erupted. They charged forward, expecting easy prey, but they were met with clever traps, hidden barriers, and disorienting holograms. Humans moved with precision, striking when the enemy was most vulnerable. Lyria and Rylan worked side by side, guiding the defense and adjusting tactics on the fly. By sunset, the raiders were defeated, retreating into the plains with heavy losses. The colony had survived, and Lyria had played a crucial role. She stood on the cliff overlooking the battlefield, breathing hard, exhilarated by the victory. Rylan joined her, nodding toward the horizon. "You were incredible today. Humans are resourceful, yes, but you inspired them." Lyria felt warmth in her chest. She had never experienced this. Praise from someone she respected, and admiration from people who had once seemed inferior to her. "And you," she said quietly, "led them brilliantly. You're remarkable." For the first time, neither spoke of superiority or status. They were partners, equals, united by necessity and now by choice. That evening, as the twin moons rose over Arden, Lyria sat by the central fire with Rylan and a few colonists. She shared stories of Zythera, its floating cities, and its intricate machines. The humans listened, fascinated, asking questions and laughing at her anecdotes. She realized that her stories, once meant to show her superiority, now built bridges of understanding. Rylan watched her, a smile playing on his lips. The heiress who had arrived haughty and aloof was now a valued member of the colony, someone who had learned the strength, courage, and ingenuity of humans. He felt a deep sense of pride, not just in her, but in the partnership they had formed. That night, alone in her quarters, Lyria reflected on the events of the past weeks. She had lost a wager, been forced into a marriage she had once considered humiliating, and yet she had discovered something far more valuable: respect, friendship, and the realization that humans were capable of greatness. Perhaps this punishment was not punishment at all, she thought. Perhaps it is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to see the universe from a perspective I have never known. She looked at the stars above Arden, twinkling in the night sky. Somewhere among them were her family, her world of luxury and power, and somewhere in this small, dusty colony, she had found something unexpected. A human who could challenge her, inspire her, and perhaps, in time, change her heart. And so life continued in Arden, with Lyria and Rylan facing daily challenges, learning from one another, and discovering that courage, intelligence, and determination were not measured by wealth or technology, but by heart. The alien heiress and the human engineer had begun to understand each other, and in doing so, had begun to change themselves. The universe was vast, full of dangers and wonders, and for the first time Lyria felt ready to face it, not alone but together with Rylan, her human partner and equal. The twin suns of Arden hung low over the dusty plains, painting the colony in shades of gold and crimson. The humans moved quickly, tending to their daily tasks, unaware that danger was approaching from the darkness of space. Lyria stood atop the central tower, her violet eyes scanning the horizon. Her heart thumped with unease. "Rylan," she called, her voice sharp. "Something isn't right. The scanners show movement near the outer edge of the canyon." Rylan joined her, his brow furrowed as he examined the readings. "You're right. This is bigger than the raiders we've faced before. These ships, they're alien but not Zytheran. I've never seen this fleet before." Lyria's heart sank. "Do you think they're hostile?" Rylan didn't answer immediately. His eyes were steady, analyzing. "They wouldn't come all this way without reason. We need to prepare for the worst." The council gathered in the central hall. Lyria and Rylan stood at the front presenting their findings. The elders exchanged worried glances. "This fleet is advanced," Rylan explained. "Their ships are faster and more heavily armed than anything the colony has. We cannot fight them head-on." Lyria stepped forward. "Then we will fight smart. Humans have resourcefulness, and I have alien knowledge. Together, we can turn the terrain to our advantage." The council hesitated, but the urgency was clear. The humans began to prepare defenses. Barricades were reinforced, energy barriers strengthened, and communication lines secured. Meanwhile, Lyria worked tirelessly with Rylan, designing traps, tactical plans, and contingency strategies. As the sun set, the alien fleet appeared on the horizon, glowing against the darkening sky. Lyria felt a shiver run down her spine. These ships were sleek, silver, and merciless. Unlike the raiders, they moved with purpose, precise and calculated. Rylan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We can do this," he said firmly. "Trust in the humans, and trust in yourself." Lyria nodded, swallowing her fear. "I have no choice but to trust him, and them." The battle began with sudden intensity. The alien ships unleashed energy blasts that shook the colony. Humans moved swiftly, activating defenses, manning cannons, and using their clever traps to slow the enemy. Lyria worked beside Rylan, adjusting holographic decoys, rerouting energy, and guiding the colonists. Despite the chaos, the humans held strong. They were smaller, slower, and less advanced, but they fought with determination using strategy, courage, and clever improvisation. Lyria watched them with awe. These people, whom she had once considered primitive, were proving themselves capable in ways even she could not anticipate. Rylan directed the defense, issuing orders calmly under fire. Use the canyon walls. Funnel their ships through the narrow passages. Focus fire on the leading vessels. Lyria's mind raced. She identified weak points in the enemy ships and relayed instructions to the humans. With coordinated attacks, they began to disable the alien fleet's smaller vessels. Larger ships, however, continued to press forward. The aliens had one clear advantage: advanced weapons and shields that the humans could not match directly. Lyria realized that brute force would not win this battle. They had to outthink the enemy. "I have an idea," she shouted to Rylan over the roar of explosions. "If we use the canyon's magnetic field generators, we can create an interference pulse that will disrupt their shields temporarily." Rylan's eyes widened. "It's risky, but it might work. Can you control the pulse?" "I can," Lyria replied, determination sharpening her voice. "But I'll need you to guide the colonists to activate the energy conduit simultaneously." They divided tasks. Rylan ran to coordinate the human teams, ensuring that every generator, every relay, and every soldier was in position. Lyria focused on controlling the magnetic pulse, her hands moving across the alien interface she had adapted for human use. As the enemy ships approached the canyon, the humans activated the generators. Lyria initiated the pulse, feeling the energy surge through the circuits. A bright wave of light spread across the canyon, and the alien shields flickered, faltering for a brief moment. Rylan seized the opportunity. "Fire!" he shouted. Cannons, energy launchers, and improvised weapons struck the vulnerable ships. Explosions lit up the night sky. The humans cheered, their courage and ingenuity shining brightly. But the battle was far from over. One alien ship, larger and more heavily armed than the rest, broke through the defenses and headed straight for the colony's central hub. Lyria's heart raced. If it hit, the colony could be destroyed. "Rylan," she screamed. "We have to stop it." Rylan nodded. "I'll distract it. You disable it." He sprinted toward the weapon station, setting traps and firing at the ship to slow it down. Lyria ran to the control console, calculating the trajectory and weak points. The ship unleashed a beam that destroyed part of the wall, sending debris flying. Humans scrambled to safety, but Rylan moved with fearless precision, using the terrain to avoid the blast. Lyria focused, overriding the ship's systems with her alien knowledge, rerouting energy, and creating feedback loops in the ship's circuits. Finally, with a pulse of energy and a precise strike, the alien ship faltered and crashed into the canyon, neutralized. Lyria collapsed against the console, gasping for breath. Rylan joined her, a small smile on his face despite the exhaustion. "We did it," he said softly. "The colony is safe." Lyria looked at him, her violet eyes shining. "We did it together." The humans gathered around them, cheering and celebrating their unlikely victory. Lyria felt a deep sense of pride, not just in herself but in the humans who had fought alongside her. She realized that courage, determination, and cleverness were not determined by species. They were qualities that any being could possess. That night, the council held a gathering to honor the defenders. Lyria stood quietly, listening as the colonists praised her and Rylan. She had never felt such genuine admiration. Among humans, respect was earned through action, not status or birthright. Rylan turned to her, his expression serious. "You've changed, Lyria. You see humans differently now." She nodded slowly. "Yes, I was wrong to judge them. They are strong, brave, and clever. I am beginning to understand what it means to be human." "And you," Rylan replied, "have taught me that even an alien can learn from humans. We are stronger together." Lyria smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and humility. She had started this journey as a punishment, forced to marry a human she thought inferior. Now she had discovered something far more important: partnership, trust, and mutual respect. The next days were filled with rebuilding and repair. The colony had suffered damage, but the spirit of its people was unbroken. Lyria worked tirelessly alongside Rylan, helping to restore energy systems, fortify defenses, and provide guidance. She had earned the trust of the humans, and in turn they had earned her admiration. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the canyon, Rylan spoke quietly. "Lyria, I know this was never your choice, this union, this life here. But I hope you see that it is not punishment. It is opportunity." Lyria's violet eyes softened. "I see that now, and I am beginning to accept it. Not just for survival, but because I have learned the value of human courage, ingenuity, and loyalty. And I am grateful to have you by my side." Rylan smiled, a warmth spreading through him. "We are partners, in every sense. And together, we can face anything this universe throws at us." The stars above Arden sparkled, vast and endless, a reminder of the dangers yet to come and the adventures they would face together. Lyria had learned that power and status were nothing without courage and wisdom, and humans who had once seemed fragile and ordinary were capable of extraordinary feats. In that moment, Lyria realized that she had not only survived her punishment, she had grown stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, and she had found an ally in Rylan, a human whose bravery and cleverness had earned her respect, admiration, and perhaps something deeper. The universe was full of unknowns, full of challenges, threats, and mysteries. And together, Lyria and Rylan were ready to meet them, not as alien and human, heiress and engineer, but as equals, partners, and friends. For the first time, Lyria felt truly free, not free from law or punishment or duty, but free in heart and mind, ready to face the cosmos with courage, wisdom, and an unexpected bond that bridged worlds. The colony of Arden was alive with activity. After the recent attack, every human worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been damaged, repair the energy systems, and reinforce the defenses. Dust swirled in the warm wind as carts moved supplies across the plains. Children helped where they could, and engineers checked circuits and machinery with precision. Lyria stood on a small hill overlooking the colony, her violet eyes scanning the scene. She had come a long way from the haughty heiress who had first stepped onto this dusty world. Beside her, Rylan adjusted a solar panel, his sleeves rolled up and hands covered in grime. He looked up and smiled when he saw her watching. "You're staring again," he said lightly. Lyria tilted her head, a small smile forming on her lips. "I'm observing. Humans are fascinating. Even in the midst of rebuilding, you work together without hesitation." "It is inspiring," Rylan chuckled. "We've had to learn quickly. Life here is not easy, but we survive because we rely on each other." Lyria considered his words. She had relied on others in Zithera before, but always out of duty or fear. Here in Arden, reliance was mutual, built on respect and trust. She realized she had learned something far more valuable than any lesson in strategy. Wealth or status. Humans were capable of incredible strength, courage, and ingenuity. The council called for a meeting that evening. Representatives from both the colony and Zithera would discuss the next steps for interstellar relations. Lyria had been invited to speak, not as an alien heiress in disgrace, but as a representative who had fought and learned alongside humans. Rylan and Lyria walked together to the council hall, a structure made of stone and reinforced metal. Inside, Elders, engineers, and council members murmured quietly, awaiting their arrival. Lyria stepped forward, her posture confident and composed. "I have spent weeks in this colony," she began. "When I first arrived, I saw humans as fragile, limited, and inferior. I judged them by appearances and assumed strength came only from wealth and technology. I was wrong." The room fell silent, every eye upon her. "These humans," she continued, "have faced challenges I could not imagine. They have defended their homes against dangers far greater than their numbers should allow. They are clever, resourceful, and courageous. I have learned from them, and I have come to respect them, not as subjects or inferiors, but as equals, as partners." Rylan stood beside her, his expression proud. He knew that Lyria had grown, but hearing her words spoken aloud in front of both humans and aliens carried a weight that was undeniable. The council murmured in approval. Some had doubted the value of this forced union, but Lyria's words demonstrated that something extraordinary had been achieved. Humans and aliens could work together, learn from one another, and overcome obstacles through collaboration. Later, after the council meeting, Lyria and Rylan walked through the colony, discussing plans for improvement and cooperation. Lyria had proposed several projects: a joint training program for humans to learn alien technology, improvements to the colony's infrastructure, and even the beginnings of an interstellar communication network. Rylan contributed ideas for practical implementation, ensuring that all plans were achievable with human resources. Their conversations were no longer formal or tense. They laughed, argued playfully, and celebrated small successes. Lyria felt a warmth she had never experienced in Zithera, a feeling of companionship and equality. That night, as the twin moons rose over Arden, Lyria and Rylan stood outside, gazing at the stars. The desert wind blew softly, carrying the scent of dust and the promise of a new day. "Do you ever miss Zithera?" Rylan asked quietly. Lyria thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but I have realized that the life I had there was incomplete. I had wealth, power, and status, but I did not understand courage, loyalty, or ingenuity. Here I see all of that every day, and I have learned to value it." Rylan smiled. "And what about us? You've been forced into this union, but now..." Lyria turned to him, her violet eyes shining. "Now I choose it, not because I am forced, but because I see your strength, your courage, and your heart. I respect you. I trust you, and I wish to stand beside you, not as punishment, but as partnership." Rylan reached for her hand, gently taking it in his. "I feel the same way, Lyria. Together we are stronger. Together we can face anything." The colony watched as the two figures stood side by side, a symbol of unity between humans and aliens. It was not just a marriage of obligation. It was a partnership forged through trust, courage, and shared experience. Days turned into weeks, and life in Arden transformed. The projects Lyria proposed were implemented, and humans adapted quickly, learning from her knowledge while applying their ingenuity. Together they built better energy systems, improved water distribution, and enhanced the colony's defenses. Their combined efforts inspired the colonists, and word of their success spread to other human settlements. The alien council from Zithera took notice. Lyria's family, who had once been disappointed and angry at her loss, now saw the value of human ingenuity. They sent envoys to Arden to learn from the humans, and to witness the partnership that had formed. Lyria stood proudly before them, explaining the lessons she had learned and the accomplishments achieved with Rylan and the humans. Her parents, initially stern and judgmental, watched her with a mixture of awe and pride. They had expected humiliation, but instead they saw growth, respect, and achievement. Lyria had turned her punishment into triumph. One morning, as the colony worked together under the bright suns, a young human girl approached Lyria. "Miss Lyria," she said shyly, "thank you. You helped us survive, and now you help us build a better home. I want to be like you and Rylan someday." Lyria knelt to meet the girl's eyes. "You can be better than us," she said gently. "Use your courage, your cleverness, and your heart. That is what makes humans and all beings truly strong." Rylan watched from nearby, pride swelling in his chest. Lyria had embraced humanity not just as an observer, but as a participant, learning their strengths and inspiring them in return. He knew that together, they had changed not only the colony but the perspective of two worlds. As the weeks passed, Lyria and Rylan continued to grow closer, their partnership deepening. They faced challenges together, mechanical failures, supply shortages, and occasional threats from space, but each trial strengthened their bond. They had learned to rely on one another, blending alien knowledge and human ingenuity into solutions that neither could achieve alone. The day finally came when Zithra's envoys arrived in Arden. Lyria welcomed them, standing confidently beside Rylan. The envoys were impressed by the thriving colony, the cooperative spirit of the humans, and the leadership of the alien Heiress. Lyria explained the lessons learned. Courage, resourcefulness, and loyalty were not determined by species. Humans had proven their worth, and aliens could benefit from cooperation, trust, and mutual respect. Her parents approached her privately. "Lyria," her mother said softly, "we feared this punishment would ruin you. But you have transformed yourself and you have shown us the value of humanity. We are proud." Lyria smiled, her heart light. "Thank you, Mother. I have learned that strength comes not from status or power, but from courage, loyalty, and ingenuity. And I have found a partner who shares those values." Rylan stepped forward, taking her hand. "And together we will continue to build a future where humans and aliens work together, not as superior or inferior, but as equals." Lyria nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, together." The twin suns set over Arden, casting long shadows across the plains. The colony stood strong, rebuilt and fortified, a testament to the courage, ingenuity, and cooperation of humans and aliens alike. Lyria and Rylan stood side by side, looking toward the stars, ready to face the future together. In the quiet moments, Lyria reflected on how far she had come. She had entered Arden as a punished heiress, filled with pride and doubt. She had faced challenges, danger, and discomfort. She had witnessed human courage and ingenuity firsthand. And she had discovered trust, respect, and partnership with Rylan, a human she had once considered inferior. Now, she saw the universe differently. Strength was not measured in wealth, power, or technology. It was measured in heart, courage, and intelligence. Humans with their ingenuity and determination were truly extraordinary. And she, once haughty and proud, had become a bridge between worlds, a symbol of unity and a partner ready to face any challenge. Together, Lyria and Rylan gazed at the stars. They knew the universe was vast and full of unknowns, but they had each other, and the humans of Arden, to rely on. Together they would explore, protect, and inspire, showing that cooperation, courage, and mutual respect could overcome even the greatest challenges. And so, the alien heiress and the human engineer, bound once by law and obligation, now stood as equals, partners, and friends. Their story was no longer one of punishment, but of triumph, growth, and the limitless potential of humanity and alliance across the stars. The universe awaited, vast and unpredictable. But for Lyria and Rylan, for Arden and its people, the future was bright. They had survived, learned, and grown together, and nothing could stop them now.